The July 11th, 2022 regular Wasilla City Council meeting is called to order. The time is 6 p.m. Before we begin, council, please put away cell phones. If you've got personal business to attend to during the meeting, please move for a recess. If you are participating telephonically, please mute your phone unless speaking. Also, when speaking, please state your name for those streaming the meeting. As a reminder to all attendees, the meeting is being streamed live. The camera is located directly in the back of the council chambers right above the clock. Madam Clerk,
Would you like me to call you roll, Madam Mayor?
please call the roll. I was giving Colleen time to have a seat.
Thank you. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
Present.
Councilmember Graham.
Here.
Councilmember Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Vlock.
Here.
Councilmember Rubeo.
Here.
You do have a quorum, Madam Mayor. All council members are present with us in council chambers, except for Councilmember Brown, who is participating telephonically.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and Councilman Graham, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item of business is approval of the agenda. Council, before I ask for changes to the agenda, I'd like to recognize Councilmember Rubeo in regard to AM number 22-20, contract award to Big Dipper Construction in the amount of $816,939 for the City Roads Paving Program 2022 through 2023.
Thank you, Mayor. While I do not have a conflict of interest to declare, I do want to make the public aware of my relationship with Big Dipper Construction. The company is owned by my father. He is not a member of my household, and I have no financial interest in his company.
Mr. Johnson.
Madam Mayor, I am a property owner on the adjacent property. I'm also on the HOA board, which is the adjacent property to most of the improvements, with the exception of one little piece. And I just wanted to declare my relationship with this particular item.
Okay.
Is that, Councilman, if I may, Madam?
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson, is that in regard to AM number 2220, the paving?
Yes,
So the property you own is adjacent to?
yes, I'm on the board of directors on the adjacent property.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Mr. Graham.
Madam Mayor, I could make the same statement as Mr. Johnson. I live near that property, and the homeowners association owns property immediately adjacent to that.
Okay. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard, I believe you plan to request clarification from the council on the motion made at the last meeting appointing a grants policy committee, and that may lead to discussion under council comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was going to ask for clarification on that. Is it something that you would like me to address at this point, or do you want me to do it further down in the agenda?
Further down in the agenda, if you would, please.
Okay, Madam Mayor, could I do it before public participation or before consent agenda is approved? After 7.2, maybe?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Sir.
Then I would like to add resolution serial number 2210 to new business for discussion rather than on the consent agenda.
Resolution, new business. Okay. All right. Okay, are there other changes to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda will stand as amended. There are no special orders of the day, and we are on to commission and agency reports, and Tonight, we have Kelley Sumners and Edith McKee here this evening to provide an update on the Main Street Rehabilitation Project. If you would state your name and title for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Kelley Sumners, and I'm the project manager with the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities.
I'm Edith McKee, and I'm the project manager for HDR, which is the design and engineering consulting firm developing the project.
Okay, and ladies, if you would continue with your presentation.
Okay, like I said, I'm the project manager for the state, and this project's been on the books and being developed for several years. We're getting towards the end of our design phase. And this project is going to be implementing the Downtown Overlay District guidelines that are in your comprehensive plan, and it's really going to make a sense of community and gathering spot that Wasilla really doesn't have today. And with me today is Edith. She's going to give you a short presentation on the project. So with that, I'll give you to Edith.
So, as Kelley said, my name is Edith McKee. I'm the HDR project manager, and I took over from Matt Stone, who was HDR's previous project manager, in mid-2019. And so today we'll talk about the purpose of the project, where design is at, current activities, what's next, and construction. So the purpose of the project is to improve travel efficiency, which is to increase traffic circulation, decrease delays, increase the north-south travel options, reduce congestion, which is to reduce delays at intersections, and the way that we're measuring that is through level of service. And a good way to explain level of service is how many light cycles you wait at an intersection and how dense the traffic is. So in the picture that you see there, that's a very undesirable level of service. You see a lot of cars waiting. You see a lot of cars bumper to bumper. Another purpose of the project is enhanced safety, which we intend to do with improved bike and pedestrian facilities, designing the road to current design standards, reducing road and railroad conflicts, and reducing crash rates. So the design history, is why we're here to give you an update. So the project was DOT contracted with HDR and began the project design and engineering in 2014. They went through several different, the NEPA process, which is to present different alternatives to the public and do an alternative analysis, which included the no-build, widening Main Street, and the couplet. And the couplet is the selected alternative. They've been through an extensive public involvement process, which has included the Mat-Su transportation fairs, several open houses. Previous design milestones was the local, which is a 35% design, which was in February 2015 and presented again in 2016. Plans in hand, which is 65% level, was completed in August of 2017. And so this is kind of where we're at. We're between plans in hand review and 95% review. We're targeting to be at 95% review in March of 2023. The selected alternative was the Main Street Yenlo one-way couplet. So the project would upgrade Main Street and KGB Road and Yenlo Street, Talkeetna Street. Each would become a 2-lane, one-way road traveling in opposite directions to form a one-way couplet. Main Street and Yenlo would each cross the Parks Highway and the Alaska Railroad at grade with signalized intersection. The proposed design includes sidewalks throughout the length of the project. These sidewalks will provide access to businesses on both sides of the roadway and increase both safety and mobility for pedestrians in the area. In addition, a multi-use pathway will be included along the west side of KGB Road south of the Parks Highway and will provide a connection to the existing pathway along KGB Road. A sidewalk and a bike lane adjacent to the main street will be provided north of the Parks Highway. And the goal of the proposed design is to minimize vehicle, pedestrian, and bicycle conflict while improving the capacity and safety of all the streets. The design will include lighting, undergrounding utilities where possible, So the design is within the area that you see bounded in red on the slide. Will comply with the downtown overlay district, which the goal was to create a vibrant, walkable downtown that encourages economic growth and provides an attractive place for residents and visitors to work, shop, and visit. It's intended to enhance economic vitality. It will be pedestrian friendly. It would be safer. It incorporates lighting, on-street parking, undergrounding utilities. The downtown overlay district was adopted in April of 2016 and has a uniform procedure for review and approval of projects. And the website, which is listed on the slide, has the standards, procedures, and a map of the area that's covered by the downtown overlay district. So where we're currently at is we're in the right-of-way phase. And so many of the people who live in the project vicinity have probably been contacted either by HDR's right-of-way department, the department's right-of-way department, or the appraisers. So there's 4 different activities that are occurring, and that's a temporary construction permit, which the landowner is not paid for. It's beneficial to both the development of the project and the person who owns the land. This is often where we go in and reconstruct a driveway. A temporary construction easement, which is a benefit to the department. It also has a benefit to the project, and it's temporary, so it might be that we need a little extra space to perform work from the roadway, space for equipment to move or operate, and that's called a TCE. The owner is paid for the use of a TCE. And then there's easements, which are, again, the appraiser comes out, they meet with the owner, they're public or utility easements, and then acquisitions, which is where an appraiser comes out, assesses the value of the property, and a fair market value is offered, and then the final sale price is negotiated. We're also currently working through utility design. We're coordinating with the companies. We're working through conflicts. We're identifying where relocations need to happen because there's a conflict with the project, and then also new utilities are being incorporated. So currently, we're advancing design to 95%. We're engaging in a traffic or speed study. We're looking at lighting. So in this project, it's being developed under the DOT's guidelines, but because the project will be turned over to the city of Wasilla, the city of Wasilla's lighting standards are being implemented, so there will be pedestrian lighting. Signalized intersections will be lit per DOT standards. We're locating the utilities. We're further advancing the design of roadway features. We're refining the design of the retaining walls. We're working with the railroad for drainage and the Parks Highway crossing. And then once we've completed draining design, we'll be coordinating with ADEC for approval. So what's next? Like I said a couple times, we're working towards that 95% design. We're targeting March of 2023. The environmental document will need to be reevaluated within 6 months of when we anticipate certification of the project. So we're targeting winter of 2023 with final design and certification of the project in late 2023. And then Kelley and I are working really hard to get this project to bid and award a construction contract in the spring of 2024. Once the project is transferred to construction, we're anticipating 2 seasons of construction. Businesses should expect impacts. There'll be traffic impacts. The project, once it's turned over to construction, will have information available on the DOT's 511 and Alaska Navigator websites. And this slide shows a sample. It's kind of hard to read, but shows a sample of what type of information is available on that Alaska Navigator site, and it tells you who the construction manager is, what firm's been awarded the contract, and kind of what's going on, where you can expect traffic. So it's a great source of very current information once your project's in construction. The project currently has a web page, which is that WasillaMainStreetProject.com. This is the home page. all kinds of fantastic information is here. We update it regularly. The project documents are there. The current plan set is there for the F sheets, which is what the road design looks like. The schedule's there. The public involvement history is there. Lots of project documents. How to reach out to Kelley or I is there. You can sign up to be on the project's email list there. And then that's it.
Okay. Does the council have any questions? Johnson?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Edith. I appreciate your presentation. That really answers some of the questions. However, Kelley, according to the second to the last slide, start construction in 2024. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So right now on the south side on the KGB connection to Parks Highway going across the railroad tracks, that road is falling apart. Waiting 2 years on a road which already has potholes in the 2-inch plus dimension in the middle of the road, we need to have some attention. My constituents in that particular property are really complaining at me just because of the roughness of the road. That's number one. And number two, the railway interfacing going across the tracks has got about a 2-inch steel gap already poking up. That can blow tires. So in terms of road maintenance in the winter, and I have 2 more winters to go through on that, with a deteriorating road, I would really like to see the Department of Transportation step up and at least patch or fix or do some temporary job here to make it to 2024.
That would be covered under our regular maintenance, because the road right now is state-owned. And after we can finish construction here, the maintenance and operation will be turned over to the city of Wasilla. So we wouldn't go through and do a pavement like planing or that kind of thing, but regular maintenance is still the responsibility of the state, and I can bring that to the attention of our maintenance department.
Sure, because I just don't think we can wait for 2024 as our road continues to deteriorate in that intersection. That also adds to the delay going across, because people have to slow down to such a degree, and that backs up traffic even further.
Colleen?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was actually on Planning Commission in 2001 when we did, approve the route of the couplet, and then also just the parameters surrounding that. And, here we are 22 years later, and we understand government works the way government works. And anyway, I just wanted to ask you, in 20 years, businesses have built kind of around these particular areas. And as you look at right-of-way acquisition and what have you had a chance to talk to the local businesses that have kind of built in and around these areas, and kind of what the feedback is from those folks?
So we've met with several. As they're approached by the appraiser definitely always invites them to attend the walkthrough of their site. Several of them have brought their concerns either, in favor of the project. They're like, when are you coming? We can't wait. And we have some that have concerns about, what the impacts of the change in the way that the road is configured or used will have to their business. And we've been meeting with them one-on-one as we work through the process. And, sometimes, and that's part of what happens between that 65% and 95% design, is we work with those owners to see what we can do to minimize impacts or improve the way that circulation will occur through their business areas.
I appreciate hearing that. Just follow up, Madam Mayor. So for this particular project, are we looking at federal, state, local funds for this, and how much is the project?
So I can address the how much. So the last time that we looked at the estimate in full was in the 65% submittal. And so I would say that at this point, with the current prices that we're seeing, that you're looking for a full project cost will be between 35 and 40 million with all of the utility relocation. And I'll caveat that with, that's a ballpark estimate, and, you know, we are seeing prices fluctuate quite a bit recently with the logistics of getting materials to Alaska.
Right, and I'm sorry, I should know this, but I couldn't recall if part of it was federal funding, state funding, and if there was matching in between, so.
So there is a match. Typically, it's federally funded to 90%, and then there's that 10% required match.
Very good, thank you.
Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you both for presentation. Just to follow up on what Councilperson Johnson had to say, I did talk with your regional DOT director several weeks ago and asked him to drive that section of pavement that Mr. Johnson was talking about. So you might follow up with him before you talk to your maintenance guy. There might already be a plan in place for that, I hope, but then again, he might say, what? So, who knows? So on your slides showing the project, the extent of the project, and then you talked about having gone through the process and having had a bunch of public input. The last public meeting that I went to, excluding the one that I went to with you guys just a couple weeks ago, but the one before that, where you were looking for input, the map clearly showed a turnaround on Railroad Avenue where it was going to abut up against the new road coming down, the Yenlow Road coming down, that was adequate for emergency vehicles to turn around and for other large vehicles to turn around. I didn't see that on this slide, but of course the slide's kind of small, so that one right there.
I
So-
can see it. I think there's like a little red triangular wedge. Is that what you mean right there?
Yeah, I wear trifocals, you'll have to do that. But yeah, as long as that is still there, that's important because that was something that was noted many times during the transportation fairs where you've got everything out there and you can make comments. And also and we mentioned this before, but I mean, we talked about trying to get to 95% by March of 2023. You say you're at 85% now. How many more opportunities in person will the public have to comment on this? I know there's a transportation fair coming up, but is there going to be some sort of public charrette or something to talk about this project before the transportation fair or after the transportation fair before you get to that 95%? Because once it gets to 95%, it's very difficult to change.
We don't have anything scheduled yet, but you know that it is basically a year. So yeah, we should schedule a meeting before we hold our 95%.
Yeah.
And the transportation fairs, we just sort of present everything there, so I don't really count that as a
Right.
presentation for a project because we're just trying to get as many people to come and hear about everything as we can.
Right. And I'd be happy to work with you on a location to have more localized sort of thing where it's localized to the folks that are going to be affected on that. So I'd be happy to help with that. So thank you both.
Great, thanks.
Is there any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you, ladies. We appreciate you coming out and giving us the presentation. Okay, we are now at public participation. There's one ordinance scheduled for public hearing this evening. Madam Clerk, please read the title of the first ordinance.
Thank you. Our public hearing this evening, ordinance serial number 2225, amending the fiscal year 2023 budget by transferring funds in the amount of $4,959 from the water fund to the sewer fund for a temporary utility laborer.
The public hearing on ordinance serial number 22-25 is open. Anyone who would like to testify, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Seeing no one, the public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to adopt ordinance serial number 2225?
Madam Mayor, I move ordinance serial number 2225.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Councilmember Graham and seconded by Councilmember Velock to adopt ordinance serial number 2225. Is there discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please take a roll call vote on the adoption of ordinance serial number 22-25.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
Yes?
Councilmember Graham.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Velock.
Yes.
Councilmember Rubeo.
Yes.
The motion to adopt ordinance serial number 2225 passes unanimously with Councilmembers Sullivan Leonard, Graham, Johnson, Brown, Velock, and Rubio in support.
Okay. We are now at persons to be heard. Before you begin your testimony, state your first and last name, and your comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. And the first one on the list is Mary Robinson.
Good evening, Mayor Ledford, council members. My name is Mary Robinson, also known as Randy Robinson, and I am a city resident. And in the spirit of full disclosure that I've seen this evening, I am a City of Wasilla employee. I am a part-time on-call library aide 1, so everyone's aware of that. What I wanted to address is I wanted to thank everybody for the last meeting I was at, which was June 27th. And you all discussed serial ordinance number 22, ordinance serial number 22-24. And I read up a little bit on the history, and then I read the minutes from June 27th. And I want to thank all of you for considering. I mean, it seemed to be that it was a tough decision for you to vote against it. But why I'm here this evening is because I want to tell you what I'm doing to continue to advocate for funds for WASI and for my house. Because if you don't have community buy-in, then, as Mr. Graham said, as a fiscal conservative, you just can't hand out money. As Michelle Overstreet, the ED of my house, says, it's a hand up, not a handout. So I am advocating in the community. Everyone I come into contact with, I tell them that they need to do everything possible, whether it's going to my house for a cup of coffee and lunch, donating something to the boutique, buying something from the boutique, going to WASI for lunch, donating $10, pick, live, whatever they can do. And I don't think I'm going to rise to the level of Eugene Haberman. I think all of you remember Mr. Haberman. God bless him. He's the council chamber in the sky. But I will be tenacious, and I will appear for you on a fairly regular basis to continue to advocate for funds for WASI and for my house. And I did have several questions. I wanted to thank Mr. Brown for bringing forward the Grants Policy Committee at the last meeting. And I see that Ms. Sullivan Leonard, Ms. Velock, the City Clerk, Ms. Newman, and the City Attorney, Ms. Wells, must bring back a policy in 90 days for a Grants Policy Committee. The 90 days, when does that start? When should I make sure I'm here to see what's been decided? Is it 90 days from June 27th, or?
I would count, Madam Mayor asked me to respond. I'm counting at 90 days from the day of adoption.
So that would be the 27th of June. No, whoops, I'm running out of time. And when Councilmember Graham asked for the ordinance serial number 22-24 to be postponed, I know what postponed means, but what does that mean as far as revisiting that? Am I correct when he asked for it to be postponed? Because there was some back and forth about it was taken off the table. No, was it postponed? So I'm not sure. I didn't see that in the minutes.
Chair, if there's no objection from the body, that motion was not recognized. In the end, there was no motion to postpone.
Okay.
The motion to table was deemed out of order.
Okay.
And there was no motion recognized to postpone the ordinance. So the ordinance failed.
Okay. All right. I just wasn't sure about the postponement. So may I ask one more question? If I had. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard, I noticed in your notes that you said council policy prohibiting the distribution of community grants. I looked through the municipal code and I found information in chapter 5.24 about grant programs, but I didn't know where to look where the prohibition about council policy. So maybe that's something I could, later in the week, talk to the city clerk about.
And there's a history on that, Randy, and in years past, the Wasilla City Council at times can have their own policy with regard to travel or
Okay.
education or what have you. One of the policies they did have was with regard to grant distribution.
Okay.
Back in, gosh, 2000, oh, I have to think, 2003, 2004, we had a grant policy. And then previous to that, 1997, 1998. So subsequently, after the 2004 grant process, council said we no longer wish to be in the grant distribution process. And then that was backed up 2019 again to say we no longer want to do grants.
Well, I was just curious because the municipal code and the little sticker at the bottom said updated June 27th. So, and it talks about grant programs and grant conditions. And it says grants of city funds, which everything in the ordinance said city funds. So that's why I was a little confused. But I know my time is up. I don't want to be rude, but just.
And I'm glad you're asking these questions. If I'm correct, part of that code was in relation to the CARES Act funding. So we had to have parameters to show, as we are accepting funds, how those grant funds would be dispersed. And I think that was part of it, wasn't it, Holly, our attorney? With regard to the code on grants, wasn't that developed with regard to the CARES Act funds?
In the municipal code, chapter 5.24.
I don't think the code provision itself was designed around CARES Act fund, but our criteria and how we've implemented it has been, because the city had the policy that it wasn't a grant writing business. The most recent experience we have is using criteria that are relevant to the code. But there are a lot of similarities regarding audit procedures.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you letting me go a little bit over. And as I say, I'm not going to reach Eugene Haberman levels, but you will be seeing me again. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Randy. And next we have Ann Kilkenny. And state your first, last name, and your comments are limited to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My name is Ann Kilkenny, ANNEKILKENNY. I'm a city resident. I wanted to speak about the Main Street Rehab project. My main concern is about what I saw on slide 8, the slide that showed the post office. And my concerns are these. The first goal is traffic efficiency and decreased delays. Are we certain that a stoplight is going to decrease delays? I hope that you are, and that the Public Works Department is looking at traffic counts and service levels and figuring out, because my father was a civil engineer. He came and he sat at the post office one whole day and watched that corner. And he said, that stop sign works really well. Don't put in a stoplight. Now that was just from watching, and that was years ago. Maybe things have changed. But I'm sure that there's been studies done and that there's a matrix that tells you with the number of cars going through and the number of cross streets and all that kind of thing, when a stop sign is more efficient than a stop light. Secondly, parking. Oh my goodness, parking on the street, that is not going to increase safety, especially not diagonal parking. Engineers talk about parking as traffic calming mechanism. When they say traffic calming, they mean slow you down. Think about pulling out of a diagonal parking slot. If I'm in my little Mazda next to a big SUV, I'm nearly out of the slot before I can even see around the vehicle next to me. I've just been hitting the rear end. It's a real traffic hazard. Parallel parking is much safer. I don't think there should be any parking because it really reduces the carrying capacity of the street. I hope that you are challenging these people to make sure that what they're doing is in the best interest of our city and actually does decrease delays, increase safety, and reduce crash rates. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kilkenny. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak at this time? Hearing none, we will close persons to be heard. And now we are on to moving,
Colleen. May I go ahead and talk about grants?
we are on to the Grant Policy Committee, and Councilmember Sullivan Leonard will start the discussion. Do we need Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Grants Committee met today at 11 o'clock. We had a chance to talk with Holly, Jamie, Nikki, and myself to discuss kind of where we were going with the policy and how things should be crafted. And in our discussion, we took a pause and said, you know, does the council as a whole, you know, do we have an intent that we want a committee to develop a policy for reoccurring funds that we would see in the budget process on an annual basis, or is the council's preference to have a one-time, non-reoccurring grant disbursement that may be considered for as fall time? So we wanted to make sure we were clear on what kind of policy we would be looking at, whether it was a one-time or reoccurring type process. And then also I wanted to have council's input to say, you know, yay or nay with regard to using funds towards a grant program. And so I guess I'm just asking council to give me and give myself and in our committee clarification on this. I remember you all voted to move forward to develop a policy. I just want to make sure that that's the intent of council, and with that policy, are we approving something that's reoccurring or just a one-time shot? And I need feedback on that if I could, please.
Mr. Johnson?
Madam Mayor, are we in committee as a whole?
I don't think we need to be, do we, Madam Clerk? I could move it as such.
I think really what we're just looking for is some guidance. Not being in a committee of the whole is probably acceptable with the body.
Madam Mayor?
Mr. Johnson?
So it was my understanding that we would be looking at a policy for one-time grant requests rather than something that we would budget on a recurring basis. That was just my understanding.
Madam Mayor, I agree with that because I felt like it kind of all went so fast. We were switching things, but I'm not agreeing that I want to be in the grant business for the city. So maybe looking at it as, hey, it's a one-time deal. I would agree with that.
Madam Mayor, I want to say thank you for Councilmember Rubeo to say that, because it's one of those things that you go home and then you're having to stop, pause, and think about it for a minute and say, Council, say this, or was there hesitation, or kind of where were we going? So again, that's why I want clarification today. I appreciate that.
Mr. Gray?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thanks for having a meeting so quickly. That's nice to see things move along so quick. It was my understanding after that meeting that we were actually trying to establish a grant policy based on the annual budget process. You know, I mean, if we were going to, you know, have grants available for $50,000 or $100,000 or $500,000, we build that into the budget, and then persons or individuals or whatever could then apply, you know, and then the grant policy would decide, you know, how those grant funds would be distributed. It wasn't my understanding that we were looking at, you know, people just coming to the council one by one asking for grants. It was my understanding that we were going to establish a number for the year during the budget process, and then the grants committee, or however that would work, would decide how those would be distributed, if they would be distributed.
I was under the assumption that that money, and this was before me, but looking back on it and doing some research, that was the CARES Act money, correct? So it's not budgeted into our annual budget.
It's my understanding, and perhaps Ms. Miller could help me out, we expended 100% of the CARES Act money. Is that correct?
Joe Miller, Finance Director. That is correct. We have expended 100% of the CARES Act grants.
Madam Mayor, I think what we are thinking is the CARES Act money that came back for our public safety. Is that what we got? Is that what we're talking about, isn't it? That we got quite a bit of that back. And
right, so the CARES Act grant was $15.6 million. Of that, approximately 9.6 million we received reimbursement for public safety costs that otherwise would have been funded through regular fund balance. Those are one-time revenues, and I guess I would just want to point out that from a fiscal standpoint, when you have one-time revenues, you don't typically budget an ongoing program for one-time revenues.
Thank you. And for the committee's purpose too, we were going to wait to see what the fund balance looked like, what the general fund accounts look like at year end. And my understanding is that you probably don't get that, Joan, until end of August, first part of September. So we wanted to be careful too that it wasn't kind of the cart before the horse with the policy and putting a dollar number to any particular grants one way or another. So is that correct? The year-end funds?
That is, so we'll be in the process of doing a hard close for fiscal year end to comply with all the accounting rules. And we usually release our financial statements late November. Generally, we know beyond that, there's just an reporting period. But that's where we would have a really good understanding, obviously, with the CARES Act and this component of reimbursement for public safety that, you know, is favorable to the city. But until we've really gone through all those accounting entries, we don't know the final stance on fund balance and other commitments to fund balance.
I appreciate that. And I think our situation is unique in the sense that, you know, we were working on CARES Act grants. We were looking at accepting CARES Act funds in order to disperse them throughout the city, and then also for public safety reasons. And of course, that's why an ordinance came before us in December and January requesting assistance, and then most recently requesting assistance. So, you know, the discussion has been there. And so for me as a council member, I guess what I saw, or what I was looking for, was the structure that surrounds a grant disbursement. And that's why we're here today, to figure that out. I believe wholeheartedly there are funds available to give out for those in need, whether it's seniors, youth, other entities that are in need. So I think having a program would help us to help determine, you know, the needs in our community and see how we can disperse those funds. I'm hesitant to have this as an annual thing. Again, because we have talked about it in 2021 and then 2022. I thought that the premise was we were going to wait to see kind of the year end and see where we could go with that. But with our discussion today, Madam Clerk, do you want to say a little bit about what was discussed in the committee today? And then Holly could maybe talk a little bit. Is that okay, or do you want me to carry on?
In terms of, I'm happy to, what would you, I mean, specifically?
Well, with the grant committee, what was discussed today?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Sullivan Leonard. So in terms of some work we need to do is, we looked in code. We looked in that section of code that governs granting. I've heard that referred to by members of the public as well as our city attorney at the last meeting. And so when we looked at that, we talked about the type of grants that we thought the council wanted to distribute this go-around. And they didn't really necessarily fit into some of the parameters in code. So what we are proposing to do, our first step is to bring back a code ordinance for introduction at the very next meeting. So it would be presumably adopted first meeting in August, and that's going to add a code provision in that says, basically, notwithstanding those provisions, through a non-code ordinance, the committee can bring to you our grant program for approval, and then also the dollar amount, because we know there's no funding approved. And so that's kind of our first piece, and really looking at it and trying to do this right, we want to add that section of code. Is that?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then Holly, if you could talk about subsection C that we had talked about with the grant code.
And I'll also add to that because I think it may be helpful to the public, especially based on our last discussion. One of the things that we grappled with is when you go to chapter 5.24, there is this language regarding grant program. And I think grant. There is some confusion on what a grant is because depending on whether you're in federal, state, or a municipal, when you're looking at laws for various government entities, grant can mean different things. The code provision that Wasilla adopted uses grant in sort of its everyday, plain meaning way. A grant is basically money you give somebody that they don't expect to get back from you. And so that's really all it is. And so for that reason, the criteria in 5.24, which include certain reporting requirements for dollar amounts over 10,000 and other auditing requirements under 10,000 and certain criteria, it all applies to every dollar. Yet a lot of the criteria was drafted for capital improvements, or at least it seems like it's drafted for capital improvements because it seems tailored to putting a new roof on, or which that's a comprehensive, great code provision for the city. But what the committee talked about was a provision that allowed the city a little bit more flexibility, the ability to deal with real life situations such as surplus, I could use that term, okay, surplus funds in a given year, or hardships or specific needs as they arose. So the language that the committee worked on, as the city clerk said, will bring forward a option for council of saying, hey, we have this amount of money or we have this need, we're going to, by non-code ordinance, determine that, one, it's in the best interest of the residents of Wasilla, two, funding is available, and therefore we're going to adopt a non-reoccurring grant program. In that ordinance, the council will include criteria and the dollar amount. And so, I mean, I think it's still in the process. It was just our meeting today, but if that's helpful, that's sort of the legal aspect of the.
Is there further discussion? Mr. Graham?
Thank you. Thank you both for your explanations there, and I agree. I think what we were talking about was a non-reoccurring grant program, but I think what we talked about at the last meeting was it's a non-reoccurring grant program, but based on an allocation that's made in the budget after the finances of the city are known for the year-end closure. Then we can look and say, well, you know, we have $1.3 million in surplus funds. Let's make $350,000 or $500,000 available for one-time grants. Not, I think I may have misspoken, Ms. Rubio, or perhaps didn't speak understandably enough, but I'm not talking about having a grant program every year. I'm talking about part of the budget process is to look at the city finances and determine if we are going to have a non-reoccurring grant that year, as opposed to having organizations show up to the council and say, you know, we'd like $100,000, we'd like $50,000, whatever the case may be. You know, to have it to be part of the budget process where the finances are known, and then persons can apply for that pot of money, so to speak. So I apologize for the confusion.
Any other discussion?
Madam Mayor, that, I guess I would just ask then, the committee may move forward then and bring back an ordinance and then non-code ordinance before the council for review and approval, as the clerk and attorney have stated.
Mr. Brown, do you have any input, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, when I made the motion, it was for the committee. My understanding, what I was meant to clarify was the committee would look at whether a grant was in the best interest of the city, whether we had the money, and to recommend a certain amount or no grant at all. So I think the committee has the leadway to look at all the different options, and even one may be no grant until the end of the fiscal year has been clarified, and then come back with an amount.
Clear?
Okay.
Yeah, we're good, thank you.
All right. Thank you for your work. And so now everybody's clear on what the committee needs to do, right? So we are moving on to the consent agenda. Madam Clerk, please read the title of the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have the regular meeting minutes of June 27th, 2022. We have no introductions. We did have one resolution that's going to be moved, that has been moved to new business. And so under our consent agenda, then 3 AMs to approve. The first is AM 2219, contract amendment to HDL Engineering Consultants in the amount of $38,645 for bidding construction services for the Hurley Circle Utility Extension Project. AM number 2220, contract award to Big Dipper Construction in the amount of $816,939 for the city's road paving program 2022-2023. And lastly, AM number 2221, contract amendment to HDL Engineering Consultants in the amount of $33,800 for the Spruce Avenue Well House Upgrade Project engineering services.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as read?
Madam Mayor, so moved by Councilman Johnson.
Is there a second?
Second that, Mayor.
It's been moved by Councilmember Johnson and seconded by Councilmember Velock to approve the consent agenda as read. Is there objection to the motion? Hearing none, the motion is approved. We are now at unfinished business. There's no items scheduled, so we'll move on to new business. Madam Clerk, please read the title of new business.
Thank you. That's resolution serial number 2210, authorizing the mayor to enter into a purchase agreement pursuant to Wasilla Municipal Code 528030B to acquire 6.62 acres of land identified as Township 17 North, Range 1 West, Section 11, Lot C21, located near 1155 East Depot Road. That's the Wasilla Chamber of Commerce building, in an amount not to exceed $1.2 million plus closing costs for the Wasilla Intermodal Depot project.
Mr. Johnson, you pulled this, so
I think we need a motion to
You might, yeah,
Yes, I would like a motion to approve resolution serial 2210.
okay.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been the motion's been made by Councilmember Johnson and seconded by Councilmember Graham to approve Resolution 2210. Is there discussion?
Madam Mayor, I'm in favor of purchasing the property. I want to set that right off the bat. However, I have one major concern with the property. The grade, as shown and as I can observe, is very, very steep on that south side. Do we have any engineering studies that it is actually a solid piece of property, that it isn't just going to give way at the first minor little earthquake, and thereby moving the liability for the cave-in of properties to the south side of that to the city? Because right now that liability is with the landowner. So by we purchasing that property, we would become liable for any cave-ins on that very steep grade.
Mr. Walden, can you speak to this, please?
There's nothing in this study that indicates they've done a geological study for anything, reinforcement of that slope, anything of that nature. So that is unknown.
So shouldn't, Madam Mayor, to Bob, shouldn't we ask the seller of the property to produce such a study? Because already if you stand back at the property's edge and look up, you can already see the overhang is starting to deteriorate. And I'm sure that Home Depot would be very pleased to enter into a lawsuit if that gives way.
Agreed. I think it is something that body should be considered. Take a look at it.
Holly?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just add that this approval process, this resolution, does not prevent those types of fitness for purpose, for example, from being taken into consideration, especially during the appraisal process. So to the extent that the city determines that this is a piece that we follow up on, the discretion still lies with the administration to do that and to make sure that your comments are influenced by the decision, because this approval is subject to the appraisal property for that value. So I think that provides some protection, while not complete.
Okay. Do any of you council members want to make a motion to direct administration to follow up on this?
Madam Mayor, if I could follow up on Mr. Johnson's comments, in the packet, page 87, line 6 there, talks about the responsibility of the landowner. The landowner has no responsibility for obtaining engineer studies that may be required to discover them. So the current landowner, so is it your intention that we would like to buy the property, but after we purchase the property, we would like the city to ensure that that slope is stabilized? Was that where we're headed, or?
I just want to bring to the, I'm sorry, Madam Mayor, Councilman Graham, I just want to make sure that we're knowledgeable and aware going into the purchase of this property that there is a potential liability problem with the property. From my opinion as an engineer. Okay. Now, I'm not a geological engineer. I would very much like to see a geological study, but as you pointed out, the seller isn't offering one. So, almost in my opinion, I don't know how much that would cost, but it would certainly behoove us to at least know what we're getting into before we buy the property.
So, Madam Mayor, So I'm still a bit confused. You said you're in support of buying the property.
Yes.
Are you in support of buying the property after that's done, or buying the property and then doing the study?
I certainly would be more in favor of knowing, of having the study in hand prior to buying it.
If I may, Madam Mayor,
Yes.
would it be acceptable to you if prior to developing the property, the city had that study in hand, so we purchased the property anyway, but prior to, working with the railroad to develop that and to develop the intermodal center and parking and paving and all that sort of stuff, would that be acceptable to you? Or do you need that to be an amendment to this, or, I'm just trying to figure out how to move forward.
Yeah, I'm a little bit conflicted myself in that. After we buy the property, in my opinion, the liability is ours. We own it at that point. Whether you do the geological study at that point, it's immaterial, because if it caves in, we'll be sued. So the only thing that would be helpful to the city is if we had the geological study in advance of purchasing the property. Maybe we can make the purchase of the property contingent on a study. I guess that would probably be the way. If I was going to buy a house or a piece of property and I had a concern, I would make a contingency on the purchase agreement.
Holly?
Just a couple points. One, so if you have an appraised value, if the property appraises, because this does not allow the administration to purchase the property for the 1.2 million for the sale price, unless it is appraised for that value. So if it's appraised for that value, if the city determined through a report at the point of development that it could not be used for the purposes purchased, one would presume that you could sell it to somebody else for 1.2 million. That the value as appraised stays the same. I do want to be just clear for purposes of the record and the minutes that while there may be a natural disaster on property owned by the city, and we may be sued, it certainly doesn't suggest that we are actually liable or that the city has done anything wrong, because things happen, and we certainly have responsibilities. So I just want to be clear as we talk about responsibility and liability. For the record, the city council is not admitting that there would be some liability.
Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Colleen?
I don't want to go down a rabbit hole, but I think Councilmember Johnson is correct in his questioning here. I'm fairly new to council within the past year. I don't have the history of the property that was purchased and proposed for development. This is a property piece that is next to where the depot is, and will be used for, as development moves forward for that particular area. So knowing, the gravel pit area there, and the slope of where that particular road is, I guess I'm surprised that a question like Mr. Johnson's hasn't come forward earlier. Historically, I don't know who's still here from past administration or council, well, Madam Mayor, of course, but, was there discussion on this before with regard to the grade of that particular road? Because it's pretty significant, and you could have a big downpour of rain and wash quite a bit of the gravel out. We're seeing areas right now that are being washed out all across the state, so it's not unheard of. Talking, but I'm not really giving direction because it's hard to. I haven't done enough homework to do that, but I don't think Councilmember Johnson is wrong in his request here.
Madam Mayor, is this something that the city maybe was looking at to fix after we bought it? You see people go in and haul hills out all the time and just fix the property on how you want it?
Madam Mayor, I can address that. There are many different slope stability options that we could do after the fact. As part of this whole purchase, we could say that it's gonna take X amount of dollars of an estimate for myself, and taking that into consideration of fair market value, and negotiating the Kelley was discussing, I think that's where Councilman Johnson's going with all that, and that definitely would be looked at. And you would find the state engineering, reaching the wall at the bottom, some stuff in the curve, or something in the code ring, or something to that effect, so that would be safe for the public. It would not be left as a scar that in the next 2018 floods or something like that, it would come down and would have a serious problem when people in our market.
Yes. Madam Mayor, with Bob's explanation there as to how he's thinking on moving forward, I'm more comfortable with moving forward.
Is there further discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, please take a roll call vote.
Adoption of Resolution 2210, Councilmember Graham.
Yes.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Vlock.
Yes.
Councilmember Rubio.
Yes.
And Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
No.
Motion to adopt resolution serial number 2210 passes with Councilmembers Graham, Johnson, Brown, Vlock, and Rubio in support. Councilmember Sullivan Leonard opposed.
We have no informational memorandums tonight, no commission minutes, and we are on to audience comments. Anyone who's present would like to address the city council at this time. If so, please come forward and begin by stating your first and last name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person.
Thank you, council, for this opportunity. My name is Ann Kilkenny. I spoke with the project engineer and the HDL engineer after I made my comments, and they told me some things. And basically, they said the ball's in your court, not theirs. They said that the parallel parking, not parallel, angle parking that they put in was at your request. And that it's consistent with the design that you established. They did convince me that the signal is going to be better than the four-way stops. And that they've got this matrix that they stuck all the numbers in and they ramped them up for the future and all that kind of stuff. So I'm comfortable with the signal now, but I'm still not happy with the parking. And here's part of why. Not only can you think about how pulling out of an angle parking, backing into oncoming traffic, you know that that's kind of scary to do. It does decrease the efficiency of the street, the amount of cars that can go through. And when you've got a signal halfway down the block and cars are backed up at the signal, you're not going to be able to pull out when the cars are all backed up. And then once the light is green, everybody's going to be bombing through. You're not going to be able to pull out. It's not going to be pleasant. But there's another issue. If you look at the picture on page 8 of that little packet, there's kind of pockets for this diagonal parking. I asked in Anchorage, because they have some of that, what do they do when they plow? Day one, they plow the snow into the pocket, so there's no parking. Day two, they come back with a different kind of plow, and they plow the pockets out. Downtown, the businesses pay an extra fee to have it all done in one day. Are our businesses going to do that? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council at this time? Seeing none, audience comments is closed. We are now on to council comments. And we'll start with Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just want to remind all borough residents, including city residents, tomorrow's borough special election day. If you normally vote here at City Hall, you'll be voting here again. Polls are open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. For those attending the AML Summer Conference, July 25th City Council meeting, you'll have your travel packets, per diem checks, etc. And we will all see you here on the 25th for our next regular meeting. For Wasilla City Council candidates, we have 2 seats on the ballot in October. Council candidate filing packets will be online this Wednesday, and then the candidate filing period actually opens on Monday. That's the 18th through the 29th. City Clerk's office, we're open from 8 to 5. So thank you.
Madam Attorney.
Comment, Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Graham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Follow up on the clerk's comment regarding polling places. I know my polling place has changed. I've voted here at City Hall for years, and I now will be voting at Wasilla Middle School. So the two, according to the borough website this morning, is that no longer correct?
So
I'm in precinct 120 now. 125 votes here, 120 goes to Wasilla Middle School.
if you always vote, I mean, if you historically voted at City Hall, that hasn't changed. What did change was we were the senior center at one time, and then it got moved to the middle school. For this borough election, that's going to remain the same. So if you were at senior center, now you should be at Wasilla Middle School unless you've moved.
I haven't moved, but this morning when I checked, figure out where to vote, so my ballot wouldn't be questioned, so.
Okay.
I don't question you, so I'll be here.
Well, let's usually connect, and we'll run your address to make sure you're at the right spot.
There we go. Thank you. I would also like to point out, we talk about the spirit of giving and everything. It's not too late to change or to add pick, click, give on your PFD. Now that you know what that amount is going to be, if you want to be a little more generous than you were in the past, or perhaps you've decided that you don't want to support organization A, you want to support organization B, it's not too late to make those changes online. And I encourage everybody to be generous with whatever their family budget can allow. But Pick, Click, Give is a great way to make sure that organizations locally and statewide, even nationally, can receive funding from you. Because when you do Pick, Click, Give, the organization is notified that you gave the money, not that they just got a blank check, from the state, that it actually came from your pocket. They're just passing that through. One thing I have noticed around the city as I travel around, boy, we have a lot of money invested in grass. And right now that grass is looking pretty poor. Would it be possible perhaps for the administration to look into seeing if there's some way to allocate funding to get a contractor to start putting water on that grass, or whether it takes a city emergency or what it takes? But we probably have millions of dollars invested in grass that is on the edge of dying. Right now the tops of it are dead, but we definitely want to keep the roots alive. But anyway, I would encourage the administration to look into that and see if there's some way to try and save as much as we can, even though it's probably gone for this summer, but we definitely want to get it back in the spring and go from there. And did I notice the mayor has a new vehicle? Is that correct?
Yep.
So I'm assuming that the vehicle was able to come in on the budget that we had there, and I think that's great, and I applaud the mayor and the administration, the entire administration, for making that happen. So thank you very much.
Mr. Graham, that is my personal vehicle.
Okay, so.
The city's got nothing to do with my new vehicle.
Okay, I'm sorry, I saw it parked in the mayor's spot over there. I
Right.
thought we were replacing the
Nope.
Yukon or whatever that is out there, so. That's all, Madam Mayor, thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Brown.
Simon Brown.
Has left.
That's no comment.
Councilmember Sullivan Leonard.
No comments. Thank you.
Councilmember Vilot.
I just wanted to give a kudos to the city for the parade. It was great. I don't think I've ever seen such a huge turnout. And I've been going to the Wasilla City parades for 30 years. So
Simon Brown.
Has joined.
kudos off to the city for the parade. And good luck to our own Stu Graham on his upcoming election. And that's it.
Councilmember Brown.
Sorry about that, Mayor. Thank you. No comment. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
No comment, Mayor.
Councilmember Rubeo.
No comment.
So, my comment is on the parade also. I want to thank everybody that came out and volunteered and whatever, and to Scott and your team for the mayor's picnic was great. Most people I have ever seen at that picnic. And the coolest part about it, everybody was in a good mood. Even though the bathroom line was forever. You know, the last person wouldn't need it by the time they got there. So, the parade was great, you know, and of course, everybody knows I love the parade. Chief, thank you for your guys and all the support that you give us. Public Works, same to you, you know, because this is a city thing. And it takes all of us to put it on and to make it go. We had some bumps and whatever, but we'll figure that out. So, anyway, if anyone, even in the community, is interested, Crystal, the meeting's tomorrow at, is it tomorrow?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Right, Wednesday at 2.
Wednesday at 2. We are having a parade meeting. So anybody's welcome, but when you come, I guarantee you I'm going to put you to work next year. So keep that in mind.
Where will that meeting be? Where will that meeting be?
Oh, the meeting is in the conference room, the mayor's conference room.
We're
upstairs.
Picnic too. So picnic,
Yeah,
parade.
it's the picnic. It's the whole thing. So
Is it debriefing from this year or starting again for next year?
both.
Oh, okay.
So everybody's welcome.
It's not a publicly noticed meeting, I'm just gonna
No.
chime in. So council members, I need two of you there.
Right.
No more than two.
All of you can't come. So tonight you decide.
Paper, rock, scissors?
Yeah.
You win.
Okay, there's no executive session this evening, and with no further business at hand, I'm adjourning the meeting unless objection is raised. And hearing none, the meeting's adjourned at 7:18.